What do Cicero, Queen Elizabeth I, and Nancy Reagan have in common? They all believed that the future wasn't just a mystery, it was written, waiting to be read by those who knew where to look. From flipping cards to reading the very cosmos, divination has shaped the way people see themselves and their destinies for centuries. It's not always been in the history books, but it's always been there. Today, we're peering beyond the veil, into the occult, the arcane, and the just plain fascinating. We'll meet Queen Elizabeth I's trusted seer, uncover the secrets of tarot, and step into the shadowy parlors of the Victorians with their flickering candlelit séances. The future might not be known to us, but the history of the future is. Welcome to High Tales of History, the podcast where two sisters spark up and take a hazy dive into the mysterious, the obscure, and the forgotten stories of the past. So without further ado, this is The Queen Seer, a history of divination from the Elizabethan period and beyond.
This is what happened last time. My cheeks were so sore from smiling and laughing the whole however long we were doing this last time, and I'm already there.
I feel like that's a good review, though.
It is. But yes,
we're having too much fun.
So much fun. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to the fun. We're having so much fun over here in the smoke circle. We are ready for part 2. I'm back again with my buds, but then also my sister Katie and our psychic medium and intuitive tarot reader friend Saundra. Welcome back, everybody. In episode 97, which was our part 1, we talked all about the history of divination within ancient civilizations. So we were traveling China, India, Mesopotamia, and that area of a lot of amazing civilizations, and Egypt, and then ancient Greece, ancient Rome. We took a trip all over, and we're like, you know what, we have to make this a part 1 and save part 2 for episode 98. So welcome back. In this one, we're going to be starting in the Elizabethan age with Queen Elizabeth I. We're going to be talking about some divination that was going on in a time when people were starting to maybe not believe in magic so much, but also still really believe in it at the same time. So divination in the Elizabethan age. We're going to learn about the birth of tarot. We're going to spend a lot of time there because we have a tarot reader in our midst tonight. So
well, that was great planning on your part.
Right. We really were like, if we are not talking about tarot a whole lot, we have done something wrong. Then we're going to hang out with the Victorians in their spiritualism era. They loved it oh so much. And then we're going to take that through to the New Age movement starting in the late 20th century. All right. So now we know where we're going. We have to know where we've been. We left in the Roman Empire. The end of ancient Rome, basically. We're going to fast forward now, many centuries after the fall of said Roman Empire, in a location that was, at one point, the empire's furthest reach to the northwest. That's England. On May 28th, 1555, Dr. John Dee was arrested under suspicion of violating the Treasons Act of 1534 and was sent to the Tower of London. The Treasons Act, what is that? Oh, let me tell you. The Treasons Act outlawed the prediction of the death of a monarch, the consort, and any heirs. So don't say that anything bad like death is going to happen to the monarch or any of the immediate family there.
What if, not all news is good news? What if you're like, nah, dude, you're going to kick the bucket. You got 3 months at best. You just can't tell them. Be like, I don't know. The next 3 months might be rough for you. Oh, for those of you who are listening, I'm winking, by the way. It doesn't help you at all. It was a really hardcore wink, but I think both of my eyes moved, so it was really unsuccessful. So I just blinked really hard. But, I'm just saying, if you have diviner in your midst, I'd be like, give me the good, the bad, the ugly, and all the cheese in between, because that will be important in my journey. And they'll be like, that doesn't make any sense. And they'll be like, oh, I see the cheese. That's what they're going to see in my future. I see the cheese. But also, if it's like, oh, dude, you get hit by a car, you might want to put a beneficiary on that life insurance policy. I need to know shit like that, though, and be like, oh, that's good. Thank you for letting me know. I'd really let that fall lax.
Yeah, there's certainly something that could be said for that, right? Because it's like, oh, well, you need to know if Like if the king or queen is going to drop dead in
Yeah.
3 months and you foresee this
What if your brother's an idiot?
and you're
What
like,
if you
"Oh, that
can't
needs
handle running a country? You gotta figure something out in the meantime.
yeah, get
I'm just
something in
saying that's a
line."
terrible law.
But yeah, I don't think kings and queens wanted to think of themselves, I mean, this is just me saying this, wanted to think of themselves in a way that was like could succumb so easily,
Immortal.
yeah, I don't know, that sort of thing. I don't know. But don't say anything about the death of the monarch, basically. Don't predict anything about that. If you've predicted it, keep your trap shut, basically, is what this law is saying. Now, everybody, unless European monarchies are your historical jam, I think they are absolutely bananas to try and keep track of. For the sake of our episode this evening, because we're talking about divination, not the historical trees, I'm going to try and keep it as simple as possible with this family. The Tudors, old Henry VIII. We know that guy, that fucking guy, Henry VIII. After all of his
Isn't this
marriages,
like the massive asshole?
yes, you're right. Henry VIII is the one that is typically thought of as a big old asshole. Henry VIII, after all of his marriages, ultimately had 3 legitimate children. There's Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward, in that order, and from his first, second, and third wives, respectively. When Elizabeth, the middle of those children, is born, Henry is not thrilled that she is a girl. Great, another girl, he's thinking to himself. He does not like it. And it's really important to understand how badly Henry VIII wanted a male heir and like how intensely focused he was on this, that he did a lot of, at best, shady things and also just generally downright nasty things, but at best, highly suspect and terrible at best. His first marriage was to Catherine of Aragon. I always want to say Aragorn, which is just for you, Katie. Catherine of Aragon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, that scene when he busts in at Helm's Deep, woof. That is everything life is made of right there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jesus Christ, what a man. A sensitive we can't, dude. I'll keep going.
I
I'll
know.
keep
It's
going.
okay. But it's the Catherine of. It's the Catherine of Aragon.
Gotcha.
Maybe not Aragorn, but you keep that on replay in your mind if that's what you want to have going on
Oh,
here.
you better believe. Doesn't everybody? I'm sorry, what?
Mhm. And really, he is the king that we need as opposed to Henry VIII, really. I mean, this is, can we do a switcheroo? So with this first marriage to Catherine of Aragon, she had Mary and then no more children, let alone a boy. So this is what happens with the whole breaking with the Catholic Church and the Church of England and all of that, just so he could annul his marriage to Catherine. Next comes Anne Boleyn, who gave birth to Elizabeth, another girl. Anne was really done dirty by Henry. When she did not produce a male heir, he tried to find ways to get rid of her. So then he accused her of adultery and treason. So I don't have to stay married to you, and also execution.
I'm noticing a distinct lack of romance on his part. Like, everybody likes a little bit of chips, dips, chains, and whips, but like, maybe like a kind word, a soft touch once in a while, dude. Maybe the problem is you. Rose petals, perhaps. Nice, rose scented bathwater, perhaps, so you don't smell like armpits, because I know you were sitting in a doublet all day. Like, I'm just saying, like, he didn't work too hard.
Yeah. So unfortunately, their marriage is annulled, and then Anne is executed. Elizabeth went from being Princess Elizabeth to Lady Elizabeth. So unfortunately, her and her older sister Mary, they went through this whole rigmarole of this being bastardized and then later legitimized. It's so stupid. So anyway, that's why these women are talked a lot about in history, because there's a lot going on here with the Tudors. At the end of the day, all 3 children rule at some point, and Elizabeth is the last of the Tudor house to sit on the throne. So, Laurel, why are you telling us all this in a divination episode? So we're going to go back to John Dee at the beginning, who was arrested for that treason's act. He was a Cambridge-educated scholar. He taught at Oxford. He was a mathematician, an astronomer, astrologer, occultist, alchemist. Elbow patches for days on those blazers right there. Making gold? What? Alchemy? Sees the stars? What a man. Anyway, sorry. I don't know. I think John Dee might not have been like also maybe the greatest person in history. I think there's some interesting stories about him, some controversies maybe, but the point being, he was the court astrologer for Queen Mary I, so Elizabeth's older sister. When Mary became queen, she unfortunately suffered a series of false pregnancies, which today it's thought that maybe she might have had ovarian cysts or some sort of reproductive issue that like just wasn't known at the time, just didn't allow her to get pregnant, and created what is known as pseudocysts, which are also called phantom pregnancies. So she's experiencing the symptoms of pregnancy, but is not actually pregnant. So if Mary was pregnant, that would then change the order of succession, and Elizabeth's very existence could threaten the whole monarchy. Also, let's add this to the mix. Elizabeth is Protestant. Her older half-sister Mary is Catholic, just like her Spanish mother, Catherine of Aragon. This is also during the time, especially because of the breaking with the Catholic Church. There's this whole the Protestant I almost said uprising, the Reformation. There we go. I was trying to pull that out of my back pocket. Martin Luther, his 99 Theses, and the breaking of Protestantism and Catholicism and Christianity. So this is all during that time. In Europe, we also have within whole, like the monarchies of different countries, that it's Protestant versus Catholic, like in England here. So that could change things more than just who's sitting on the throne. And so while John Dee was a court astrologer, Lady Elizabeth had asked him about the horoscopes of herself and Mary, and John did so. And he predicted that Mary would die without children and that Elizabeth would one day be queen.
Oh.
They find out about this divination that's happened, about these horoscopes that's happened, and that's what lands him in hot water for a little while. But he gets out of it. He ends up being okay. But it doesn't start great for him with that, because in medieval and early modern Europe and Britain, belief in magic fell into a few categories. There was common magic, learned magic or learned magic, and diabolical magic. Common magic, I know, like some of them really speak for themselves. Common magic was widespread. It's thought to be like, folk magic, lucky charms, love spells, and potions, and typically thought of as something that was practiced amongst lower classes, and then sometimes aristocracy would like come and visit, like, oh, don't tell anybody I was here. I want this special thing that you can do for me. All right, lady, where's your money? Anyway, I don't know. I had a whole scene planned out for that. I was like, I don't know where this is going. I'm starting to panic.
You had the cloak. I could tell that was the cloak movement. I was like, oh, I feel the flowing cloak and the hood up so they don't know who you are as you hurry to your destination.
Yeah. Don't
Probably thunder, little bit of lightning, rain, sleeting down sideways.
There it is. Yeah, that's it. Common magic. Learned magic was reserved for the wealthy, or at least like middle class, upper middle class, who were educated and most likely went to university and had a scholarly level of knowledge with astronomy, astrology, science, alchemy. Diabolical magic, as the name suggests, is associated with any sort of demons or dark magic. Now, again, that could be open to interpretation. There might be people that are like, yes, bring forth the devil, but there's probably people that are doing other practices that others might look at and go, well, that's too witchy for me and too devilish and too diabolical.
I'm pretty sure it was in the 1500s is when that witchcraft thing that I went over in that the episode I did on the history of witches. I'm pretty sure,
so right, Katie.
And it didn't get repealed until the 1970s or something like that. And I was like, what the fuck?
Basically, the church or anyone who was pious would say that any sort of magic fell into this category. But over time, it became more commonplace for people of all classes to look at any sort of magic as dark, quote unquote. And this later leads to the massive witch hunts of the 16th and 17th centuries, which were championed by Elizabeth I's successor, King James VI and I of England and Scotland. Boo.
Is that the dude
also
who
that
rewrote
fucking
the Bible
guy?
to the King James version?
Yeah. But what is interesting is recently, I'm just speaking about this off the cuff, I just saw this while I was researching this episode, and Scotland has come out with a tartan that honors the victims of the witch hunts. And it's really beautiful. So like,
that's cool.
For those watching, I'll have it up here so you can see it. Really lovely. So that was a commemorative tartan that
Yeah.
Scotland put
It's
out.
stunning, and
Bravo,
it's
Scotland.
very exciting because it's brand new, as of 2025. The Witches of
Mhm.
Scotland, is a community that, commissioned it. Very
Oh, that's
exciting.
awesome. Yeah, those all came out of this same sort of time period. So you have a lot of people that are still holding on to maybe um, pagan beliefs or folk magic, as sometimes it was called, or at least having some sort of attachment to it, even if they're like, well, I go to church on Sundays, but I have witchy quote unquote sort of things that I do, and that's just all part of my practice or my culture or this or that, right? But after a while, like it was very scary to have magic, anything, any sort of suspicion put on you. So it's in a really precarious position in the 16th century. While I said like the use and the belief in it was rather prevalent, this is a century before the Enlightenment and a greater understanding of science too. So it was also like, well, this is our science. This is how we're understanding the natural world. Before there was a lot of like um, specialized processes around science. So it has a really important place in culture all the way up to this point. And on the flip side, the church, as I mentioned, didn't like any of it. So then there's like this conflict between God fearing people and their belief in the supernatural and magic. Part of the church's problem with it also was that God's omniscience and foreknowledge is exclusive to him and the church who like speak for him. And if there's an alternative way to have that knowledge for yourself, that's a huge threat to the church. John Dee, he fit into that learned magic category. Later, when Elizabeth I is queen, or Elizabeth is queen, making her Elizabeth I, John Dee becomes a close science advisor and astrologer to her. The early years of Elizabeth's reign was really rocky, with a lot of people trying to usurp the throne, using magic against her.
So, did Mary die without children? I
She
want to know.
did. Hmm.
Ah, so he was
She
right.
did indeed.
Mhm.
And then there's Edward, who actually comes before Elizabeth, just because he's the male heir. I don't know
The
what the
phony king of
yeah,
England.
not quite. He's a boy king. He becomes a boy king, or sorry, starts a boy king, ends a boy king. He dies very soon after taking the throne.
Oh,
He's not king for much more, I
you
think,
think
than like
somebody
5
killed him?
years. No, he was really sick. He was sickly.
Oh,
Died from like a fever or something.
sick, huh?
Yeah.
Could have
Well,
been poisoned. Putting it out there.
I'm not here to speak on these things, but
Get him the fuck out of
he
the
was
way.
not on the throne for very long, and then Elizabeth took the throne. So she figures out, if people are using magic against me, I'm going to fight fire with fire, figuratively speaking. And I have my own conjurer now, Dr. John Dee. And he was known as the Royal Advisor in Mystic Secrets, which sounds hot. That is sexy. He would advise in matters of science, math, science, magic, and exploration. And he would use numerology, astrology, and scrying as divination tools. Well, scrying, as we got a little taste of in part one, is when a practitioner will look into a reflective surface, such as mirror, water, crystal ball. Some people use fire, in order to receive messages and visions. I think crystal balls are like the most quote unquote classic divination iconography that exists. What Dee owned was an obsidian spirit mirror.
Oh, we went over that.
Mhm.
The Egyptians use the obsidian? Yeah.
Yes, they had obsidian too. Same was the case in uh,
Babylonia?
Mesoamerica with the
Oh.
Mexica. Yeah.
Oh, for
So,
real?
yeah, obsidian, it's one of my favorite stones. It's this, I'll have a picture up of John Dee's mirror, which is at, I think it's the British Museum, but I'll
You
have
can
that
go
up here
look
so you
at
can
it?
see it. Yeah. It's circular.
Shut
And
the
it's got
front
just like a
door.
little like tab almost that goes down. So circle with like a little boop boop at the end. And it's this really beautiful, smooth volcanic glass. It's jet black and it's, again, really reflective. And it's very common to be used for scrying purposes. John
Field
Dee,
trip.
yeah.
Field trip.
Mhm.
Wanna go look at it?
Speaking of John Dee advising on matters of exploration, like I said, keep a pin in that last one. He was a fan of it. And his scrying mirror was found to be from Mesoamerica, from the Mexica people. Mexica, also known as the Aztec. keep in mind, this is the century of exploration and colonization. So the 1500s had so much going on.
Mm.
Testing determined that Dee's mirror originated in Pachuca, just northeast of Mexico City, which was under Mexica control at this time in the early 16th century. So using obsidian it was a big part of Mexica life. It was in their weaponry, it was for medicinal purposes, it was as a shield against bad spirits, the scrying. So that's where he got his scrying mirror. So if you see John Dee's mirror, it's a really great example of Mesoamerican scrying mirrors that were obsidian. So Dee, he's employed by Elizabeth I, and a lot of his divination practice experiments could fall. I don't know what to call that. I realized I wrote it really strange, and I was like, oh, here we go. Let's pick a word for this. A lot of his experiments that he was doing within divination could technically fall under physics, at least in terms of like how the church would view it. But being labeled as an alchemist is a little dicey because that's more magic-y than anything else as far as they're concerned. So there's always an eye on D as like whether or not like he's above board with his divination. So people are always like, "What you doing? What are you working on? What is that? What kind of stuff? Explain it to me. Is the devil involved, or is this science?" You know, like
The devil.
they were really watching him, and he had to really like keep some notes on what he was doing. It's when he decides to start talking to angels that it becomes his downfall. Now, it's not that people didn't believe in angels in this time period. In fact, they were like, you should believe in angels because God, but you shouldn't talk to them. That doesn't feel like something we should do. And that is something we're very suspicious of, Dr. John Dee. Essentially, John Dee pretty much just spent his life in pursuit of any sort of knowledge. So for him, he was like science, esoteric, supernatural, anything, like any sort of knowledge. I want to just learn about it. So he was frequently pushing the envelope with what he was doing, just in that pursuit of knowledge, to be like, well, what's next? What else can we do? What's next? What's next? But he had a long-standing reputation for all these things that he did. So it's not like it was secret. His last years, unfortunately, were plagued by illness, which some people think might have been because he was working with silver, which is toxic. And Elizabeth I died not having any heirs, and James VI and first of Scotland and England took the throne. And as I mentioned a moment ago, he is very anti-witch, like very, very, very. And he implemented the Witchcraft Act in 1563, and witchcraft trials and witch hunts ensued.
There were werewolf hunts too.
And werewolf hunts. Yeah.
They were all there.
Notes. I'll put that in the show notes.
Definitely check that episode out. What a wild time that was. Not for the faint of heart. It's very violent.
Mm-hmm.
The in the dark ages, darling.
Yeah.
If we did something well, it was kill each other horribly and creatively.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I find interesting though about Elizabeth and John Dee and that whole kind of bubble that they allowed for any type of magic. It's so it's interesting to hear the threshold that that culture had at the time for like wealthy people. You know, it's like, tell me what's okay for wealthy people to do, but not poor people to do magic. You know what I mean? Or some sort of channeling or divination that way. It's like the poor people could have divination as like a lucky charm, like a lucky rabbit foot or something like that. But if you're rich, you can go delve in further and that's acceptable, right? But then even for the wealthy, it was like this threshold of, wait, now you're talking to angels. Okay, now we've gone too far.
Now we've gone too far. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, crazy. And especially because in church, they're teaching these things like, through the Bible and the angels are, talk to whomever and whatever. But you can't. They could, but you can't, because that is something my human brain can't really process and accept. So now you're doomed. You know what I mean?
Or unwilling to give up the power, because if you hold the power and communication of the church, you hold the people. I think that had a lot to do with it.
Yes,
yeah,
that too.
You're not worthy enough to talk to God? Listen, nobody tells me what to do.
And also pay for it.
Yeah, that too.
Which was one of the things that Martin Luther was protesting against.
Yeah.
Pay for your salvation.
I can't even pay for health insurance. I can't pay for my salvation. Are you nuts? I'm broke as a joke.
Yeah, for real. God.
I got filed as the harbinger of doom this year. You know how much money I made? I made like 147 in like all like interest rolled together. I paid 135 to get my taxes done. I got $12 to my name. Or is that 12?
I will accept your math.
Mm-hmm.
You know, can you imagine the pressure that was put on John Dee to not say something that was deemed like, oh fuck? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The pressure of like, be accurate, but not overly
Too
accurate.
accurate.
Way that is not scary. That's be accurate in a way that's comfortable for these people, as not to be,
You see these lines? You
Yeah.
drive in them. You don't leave them.
Yeah.
And honestly, that is very interesting because as a person who readily receives information, and I'm neurospicy, so it's hard for me to not just kind of say what's coming to me. He would have to have some serious self-control in knowing what he could and could not share. So I would be so curious to know if he had like secret diaries of what he also like was having downloads and like these pings that he didn't share with anyone. I hope someone discovers that. That'd be cool. But I
I
digress.
should
If
have
they
looked. I
have, they've
haven't.
hidden it.
Yeah, I wonder if there
Yeah,
is some sort of.
probably in the Vatican somewhere.
Yeah.
Probably.
Quick, hide that shit. Yeah.
Probably.
Hmm. It's in that big bunker where the Ark of the Covenant is in Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah.
That big giant ass
Definitely.
warehouse somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and
Oh,
it's like
God.
it's in a box somewhere. But yeah, he was. Yeah, he was really nervous about what could happen to him because of his well, everybody knowing about his divination practices and him doing this, like that's his life work. He was I mean, I should say thankfully for him, he was excluded from the court of King James, but not persecuted. So that's probably the best option that could happen. You don't have to be a part of the court and you can leave and no one's coming after you. So he died just outside of London in Mortlake in 1608. So he lived out his years, but yeah, he was a little nervous because he's like, everyone knows who I am and what I'm doing around here. Fun facts to throw in about John Dee. Whatever you as the listener want to think about his divination practices or his talking to angels, his mathematical genius, giving us today like the universal symbols that we use in math, as well as his understanding of astronomy, were groundbreaking. He had some big knowledge that he brought forth during this time.
It's amazing how often that coincides because remember in India how they were developing the numeric system and zero and all that stuff and like it's amazing how often these two things coincide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And his understanding in astronomy and science and mathematics led to the development of more advanced theories like gravity down the road. So some of those things kind of help set things in motion. He's immortalized in literature. He's believed to be the inspiration for Shakespeare's Prospero in The Tempest and Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. Yeah.
I am a very distant, obviously, relative of William Shakespeare. We have the whole like paperwork and all that kind of stuff. He's like my 15th cousin or my something cousin 15 times removed or something like that. It's in my tree. It's really fucking wild. Yeah.
Dude had the wildest sense of humor. He was a trip.
Yes, he was.
I would love to know more about him, like
Billy Shakes, man.
Billy Shakes.
non normal history stuff of him. I would love to know like more
Yeah.
about that.
He was a good time. That's how I would describe him.
That is a very cool thing.
Yeah.
Also, everyone, in the correspondences with the Queen, he was the first person to use the term British Empire. So think of that what you will, better or worse. But he was the first person to like coin that phrase. And any letters that were secret and for the Queen's eyes only were designated with 3 numbers. Do you want to guess what those 3 numbers are?
Oh, 007.
007. There we are. Yes. So this is where 007 starts as like a secretive, spy-y kind of thing. John Dee was not the only big name astrologer of the 16th century. And in fact, a more popular name, probably for more of our listeners, is that of a Frenchman who lived in the first half of the 1500s. So you get the first half, this guy, and then the second half, John Dee. Now, if you are a child of the 80s and the 90s, you saw this man's name everywhere. If you were in a grocery store checkout line, more specifically, if you were anywhere near the cover of a National Enquirer. Do you know, Saundra, do you know who I'm talking about?
I think I have a guess.
Okay.
Does his name begin with an N?
It does. Starts with an N, ends in Ostradamus. Nostradamus. Yes, that is a very popular name because some people feel that he had a lot of prophecies that came true and that they're also far reaching in time, even into our contemporary history.
I
So,
have very, very, very vague memories about hearing his name, and
okay.
that's it.
So he was born in France in 1503. He started a medical practice in the 1530s, even though he didn't have a medical license, because who cares? It's the 1500s. You're just going to put some leeches on somebody or just bleed them. It's fine. So it's 1547. Nostradamus begins writing a book of prophecies called Centuries, which was released in 1555. These prophecies were written in quatrains, 4 lines of rhyming verse. The quatrains were grouped in hundreds. Each set of 100 quatrains were called a century. Clever name for your book, sir. And he created some buzz when some of these predictions came true during his lifetime. And he was invited to the courts of Catherine de' Medici and then the queen consort of Henry II of France. Sorry, that sentence came out very slow. And then the queen consort of King Henry II of France. So they're like, wait, this guy's predicting stuff. You get to come over to my house. His predictions were often about general things. Conflict-related events and natural disasters are the 2 big ones. Some people believe he's made accurate predictions about the death of Henry II, the French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon, the rise of Adolf Hitler, and 9/11. Others will say that his predictions are written in such a vague way that one can mold them to fit virtually any event that's occurred. So I'm just going to let you decide for yourselves how you want to feel about that. But that is one of the most famous names in prophecies and divination, Nostradamus.
Can he still read his shit now? Like, you can go find it. Yeah, it ain't
Yep, you
hard.
can go find it. And there's actually, if you just even type in Nostradamus in Google, uh, you can get like a whole list of people going, here's all of his prophecies that have come true, or here's what's left, or this or that. I just saw there's a new man who's calling himself the new Nostradamus. Or sorry, there's a man who's calling himself the new Nostradamus. I don't think he's a new man. He's a grown man. And he's not brand new. He's a person who's lived some years on this earth. He calls himself the new Nostradamus. So I think there's a new person that's trying to do that, trying to fill those shoes.
Let me catch season 1 before I catch season 2. Let me start there.
Start with the OG for sure, because I'm not sure what this other guy's doing. I didn't look into it.
I have heard of this new guy. I didn't realize he was being referred to as the new Nostradamus, but yes, he is making bold predictions about the United States. What do I say? United States, and I don't want to say
so great.
Like the administration of the current administration of the United States.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Nearly a century after John Dee, the Enlightenment sweeps through Europe, often called the long 18th century, because it starts at the end of the 17th century. Here we go. And then end of the 1600s, goes through the 1700s, and then ends in the early 19th century. So basically 1685 to 1815. Divination still existed to various degrees in some cultures, but overall it was kind of squashed. It was put to the side for a while because this was the age of science and reason, and divination wasn't exactly viewed as that anymore. So it's not until we get forward a little bit to those batty old Victorians. I love it whenever they show up. What's going on with them? What's going to happen, folks? It's like, what's going to happen next? You can't stop watching.
There's going to be mummy juice that's drank.
Who knows, right? They'll try anything once, really.
They did it. It's disgusting.
Yeah. through the 19th century, so through the 1800s, the Victorians, and then into the 20th century with the Edwardian age, we see divination and anything supernatural make a resurgence in a big way. And this was because of spiritualism, so which was an like almost religious system of belief based on supposed communication with the dead, particularly through mediums. One's consciousness, energy, and spirit exists after death. It's a really interesting topic, and this whole space and time and how it really permeated culture and society is something I'm going to do an episode on later this year, probably around Halloween. So I'm not going to go too in depth with this, but I want to like really make it clear how popular this was during the 18th and during the 19th centuries into the 20th. But just know that people in Europe and America during this time were all about seances. They loved a seance and they loved a medium and divination and anything that was
Do the
supernatural.
Conjuring and the Haunting in Connecticut and all that crap.
They're like, bring it here to our house because we are so into it. They loved it. They couldn't get enough. So what I'd like to focus on is more of the divination portion of things and like how it was used in like everyday society, especially like in parlors and parlor games and entertainment. The biggest one that's going to be so much fun is tarot, the birth of tarot. Now, it was not created in this time period in the 19th and 20th centuries, although the ubiquitous Rider Waite deck, which is like kind of the one that a lot of people might recognize, that was created in 1909. It is because of how much supernatural or occult emphasis is placed on tarot over the last century and a half or so that makes its origin story a little bit murky. And this is mostly due to occult writers making its use for divination seem older than it probably was because of like how many decks have a lot of ancient and religious symbolism and iconography. So sometimes some writers will be like, this is my interpretation of how I feel about this. And then that kind of gets infused in the mythology of its origins. But it's okay, folks, because here's what we do know. Tarot started centuries earlier as a card game. It was just a simple parlor game amongst the elites of Renaissance Italy. So we're talking about like the 1430s roughly. And it's called Tarocchi. And it was basically a trumps game. You know, how many tricks can you take and trick your opponents into like getting cards from them and this and that. There was nothing telling-y, nothing fortune-y about Tarocchi. So we're going to call back to part 1 in episode 97 when we were talking about how ancient civilizations might have had some similar divination methods and how they like traveled from one place to the next, and then that culture added a little bit to it. Same goes for tarot and cartomancy, which is the divination through cards, any sort of cards, not just tarot cards. China had playing cards as far back as the 9th century CE. As trade was spreading across Asia and into Europe, the cards went right along too. All along the way, culture to culture, and over time, the cards evolved to look all kinds of ways and have all kinds of games played with them and uses that went with them. Now, unfortunately, you might not be too surprised to hear that soon after the cards went to Europe in the 1370s, the church was really unhappy about that because cards are frivolous and they encourage gambling. That was my bulldog face. We don't like it. Unfortunately for the church, though, try as they might, it's really hard to uphold a ban on playing cards, and people did it anyway because they're little playing cards and you can hide them. And also, we're the aristocracy, so fuck you, we'll do what we want because we're rich. It's very popular amongst the aristocracy. Trump-style games became really popular. Tarocchi is born. And early decks reflected some of the dichotomy of like the glitter and the opulence of the Renaissance, while also how violent it was. There's also a lot of visual criticism of the Catholic Church within these cards. And we're in Renaissance Italy. Church is not that far away. Church is everywhere. God is everywhere and he is watching. And I see you playing cards and I see what's on those cards.
He's like a sick-ass Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm. There are a small handful of tarot decks that still survive today that often get credited with being some of the earliest decks. The first two I'm going to talk about come from Italy, and they emerged pretty much within like 40 to 50 years of each other. And what I gathered, and this is my interpretation of history here, folks, is that due to the popularity of tarocchi and Italian aristocracy, it seemed to me like it was the thing to do when you had the means to commission art from an artist and be like, make me a deck that's beautiful and worthy to be hung on a wall. Like, I want the most beautiful pictures and art for my special deck. And people would be like, all right, cool, I do that. And so that's where a lot of these decks came from. And some of them might have had a few cards added that maybe added a new rule to the game for how we played. And oh, this is how we're going to trump this now with this person or this angel. Like, angels got added in. But still, tarocchi in Italy is still a trumps game. So the one that usually takes the title of world's oldest surviving deck, though not always complete, is the Visconti Sforza deck from 1451. This deck has cards like the Death card, the Emperor, the Empress, the Fool. So a lot of similar cards to what you might know in the Rider-Waite or the
You can't
Waite-Smith
have a
deck.
decent deck without the Fool.
You gotta have the Fool.
Come
in
on
there.
now.
I'm
And
sorry.
that one actually.
You mean the Fool?
Oh, that one. Like, did you just pull that up right now? It froze it for a second.
I did.
Oh, look at that. See, there it is.
It's an important, balanced part of any equation.
Mm-hmm. Another deck that is one of the oldest known is also from Italy is the Solabusca deck. We don't know who the author is of this one, but the deck roughly follows the rise and fall of the Roman Empire and included figures such as Gaius Marius, which is Julius Caesar's uncle, Nebuchadnezzar II, and the Roman god Bacchus. Bacchus, the rowdy party animal, that guy. Don't invite him over to your party unless you're wanting to make a big cleanup. I don't know.
Is that the Roman Dionysus?
Yes.
Sorry, nope. Dionysus. Dionysus is a fucking dinosaur. I'm so sorry. It's actually, so if you've seen the Velociraptor in Jurassic Park, it's actually a Dionysus. Dionysus is the god of wine from Greece. Jesus hell.
Do you want to hear something? Just like a fun fact?
Is it about dinosaurs?
I mean, I could give you a fun fact about dinosaurs, but this is about Dionysus. People in the community of like woo are like, oh, Jack Black is absolutely a reincarnation of Dionysus.
Without a fucking doubt. Have you
Yes.
looked at him? Jesus hell. I love Jack Black. It fits.
It's this Solabusca deck, the one from Italy, and then the Marseille deck, which I'm going to mention a little more about here in a second, that look very close to the Waite-Smith deck that we are familiar with today. So that one has like even more similarities with tarot as we know it. So we're going to go to France. Just mentioned it. Let's go. When tarocchi gets to France, boop, they call it tarot or tarot, if you feel like that's how you should pronounce it, because I've done that a few times tonight. Might happen again. We'll see. But still, tarot is a game for now, for the foreseeable immediate future here. The oldest deck that is coming out of France is going to be the Tarot de Marseille, and early versions of it trace back to about 1650. And the deck, as I mentioned, was generally used for playing card games. That is, until a couple of centuries later, and a French general named Napoleon Bonaparte is on his campaign through Egypt, and the people are like, what? Ancient Egypt is fucking cool, you guys. Did you know that this was here? This is amazing. There's pyramids and afterlife, and they talked about stars, and their gods look so cool. That guy's got like a really badass dog face. Like, cool, what is going on here? This is amazing. And they became just absolutely bonkers for Egypt. It's called Egypt Mania. There we go.
Do you blame them though? Like, it's pretty cool. I would be one of those people, right? I'd be like, did you see this fucking pyramids? Like, yeah, dude, I've lived here my whole life. I've seen them. Like, but do you understand?
See them again with new eyes. Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, it's a legitimate thought to have because, yeah, ancient Egypt is really fucking cool and an incredibly long history just being ancient Egypt, right? Just whatever, the huge parentheses around that one. So France is like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And all the mysticism and the rituals around death, it really like really got him, really ensnared him. Same thing's going to happen again, like about a century later in the early 20th century when Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb was found. So then everyone got Egypt mania all over again.
And
you want to say
curse.
and curse? Yeah. No, that's the myth.
Nothing.
Touch nothing. Don't
This
touch
is why I
anything.
put. See, this is why I put the doll back in the fucking wall. I know better. I've learned things. I've watched Brendan Fraser's Mummy. I know about it.
Best version of retelling mummy situations.
Oh my god,
Brendan Fraser. Can we just be honest? Touch. I have the French deck that you were just talking about. I was like, oh my god, we don't have that.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah, Tarot de Marseille. It's still in. I mean, obviously it's still getting printed, and that is the iconography of that one.
Yes.
Yeah, Katie.
I have been trying to. I forgot I had it until just now, but when I got it a few months ago, I was like kind of just diving into the differences in this deck versus the other deck. And my brain couldn't do it as well as I was hoping off the cuff. So, but yeah, I do have it if you want to have images of it. But
yeah, no, that would be really that'd be really great because it is that tarot deck that in like a couple of decades right before Napoleon is going through Egypt, people were starting to use that particular deck for more spiritual sort of practices with cards, like, oh, I wonder what I can start doing with these cards. And we're starting to interpret them in a more divination-y sort of way. And then it was this influx of all the Egypt mania and all the excitement around that again that really started swinging the pendulum the other way out of the Enlightenment and being like, right, let's go back to some esotericism again.
okay.
Pendulum is always swinging, right?
Always.
So it's probably a little bit of an oversimplification based on what I just said to say that tarot is as a divination tool came down to just like one or two Frenchmen. But for the sake of when people retell the history of tarot, but the two men that are frequently associated with spiritualizing the tarot and mysticizing it a little bit, and using the Tarot de Marseille were French occultist Jean-Baptiste Alliette, and he was the first to write about tarot as something spiritual. And then he wrote his definitive guide to tarot, which was published in 1780. So that's our first tarot book that we're getting. Around that same time, 1781, occultist Antoine Court de Gebelin, who was also super into Egypt mania. And his theory was that tarot came out of an ancient Egyptian priesthood. And using the Book of Thoth, they were forced to hide their secrets within a game to ensure the survival of their ancient Egyptian priesthood secrets. That's how he felt about it. So what makes a tarot deck a tarot deck? It has some similarities with the 52 playing card deck that we might be familiar with, but instead of clubs, hearts, diamonds, and spades, tarot suits are wands, swords, pentacles, and cups. I'm speaking strictly from like the base tarot base. Saundra, please jump in and correct me at any point if I have any of this wrong, because there are, as time goes on with decks and more modern age, it's not just cups and pentacles and coins. It's sometimes like different iconography, but the idea is the same, right? Like this, like there's like the stand-in is still the same.
Yep. Okay. 4 suits representing those things, which all stand for something. Like a cup typically represents emotions, love, fulfillment in some capacity. And then the other 3 also are symbols for other items that I can tell you if you know.
Emotions. I would be all cups. I'd be cups, 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 cups.
I'm just drawing every single one of my cups right now. I don't. I'm going all through there. All of them. All those cups.
It's so emotional. I know.
Well, there are 10 numbered cards, so you'd get at least 10 cups there and some more cups with face cards after that. There are 10 numbered cards for each of those suits, and they each have their own unique illustration. So the 10 of cups is not going to look the same as the 3 of swords, and these are all very specific imagery that goes along with each of their cards. It's part of the divination practice. Kings and queens are also a part of tarot, as are aces, and that's all part of there too. But instead of jacks, we have pages and knights. Hot. Get it? Who wants just a knight when you can have a page? Who wants just a page when you can have a knight? Why not a king? Why not a queen? All of these things.
I want Heath Ledger in A Knight's Tale. I'll take
Meow. Right? Heath Ledger, goodness gracious.
Man, let me tell you what. Here's the thing. Remember how I made the joke that my entire support group is Australian? Guess who's also Australian? Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger, yeah. I thought boys were going to look like how he did in 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah.
I was smitten kittens. I was like, is that what high school is? And then I was like, no. And I was like, girl, neither are you. But that's not all. All those above cards that are similar to the regular playing card deck are known in tarot as the minor arcana. Tarot has 22 additional cards. Oh, you get so much more. And these are really fun cards because they are called the major arcana. These include the Fool, the Lovers, the High Priestess, the Wheel of Fortune, the Death card, all of these ones that you might know here. The Magician, there we go, right there on the front. As I mentioned a little bit ago, modern day tarot decks look like all kinds of things. So some of like what might be the High Priestess in the Waite-Smith deck might be like the Taylor Swift or something in another, or like the Lady Gaga or something like that in another tarot deck. There's some tarot decks that are, oh, she's dead. There's some that are like more reflective of like something more modern or an animal or something. So, I mean, Saundra can speak more on that.
I appear to have pulled out Buster Rhymes. It's going to be a busy week for you, champ.
So there we go. But the base of the cards, like the original idea is still the same, even if some of the iconography or names might switch with it. Following the infusion of spirituality and mysticism that gets attached to tarot in the late 18th and throughout the 19th century, the Rider-Waite, there we go, let's bring it back again, Smith deck, was created in 1906 by the occultist Arthur Edward Waite and illustrator Pamela Coleman Smith. They linked their deck with the mysteries of the Holy Grail. There's all kinds of other ancient and religious iconography and symbolism throughout all of those cards. Very rich, beautiful illustrations too from Pamela Coleman Smith. Their deck is generally kind of considered like the granddaddy of the tarot decks. It's the one that's probably most popular, most utilized, most recognizable in terms of its pictures. But here's a little women's history time. It's Women's History Month. Let's throw this in. So you might know of this as the Rider-Waite deck. That's actually what mine says. Actually, it says the Rider Tarot deck. Also known as the Waite Tarot and the Rider-Waite Tarot. You will notice that Pamela's name is not in any part of the title on this, although thankfully the box does say that she is the illustrator. So when her and Waite got together to like do this project together, and he commissioned her to do the art for it, she was given a very small flat rate and no royalties. The writer part of the name comes from the publisher. So William Rider and Son of London was the one that published the cards. And so it was like the publisher and the author whose names were, for the longest time, the only ones attached to these cards. And at the time, they didn't really think that their project was going to go very far. They're like, we've made this deck. This was fun. We feel good about it, but we don't think it's going to be like this great commercial success. But it's exactly what it ended up becoming. So unfortunately, Pamela Smith, especially with not having any royalties and having, just gotten a small amount from the work to begin with, she never saw any more money come from that. And then she also just financially struggled the rest of her life as an artist. And her name, like I pointed out, her name wasn't included in the name of the tarot. On the boxes, it'll say her name. But now more and more people are starting to call it the Waite-Smith deck or the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. I don't want to be an asshole. I think everyone who's contributing their knowledge to the project is considered a part of it for sure. But I kind of feel, and Saundra, please jump in if I get, if I'm out of line here, but I feel like the illustrations are what really can give a practitioner their symbolism, right? Like you can point at this and be like, okay, well, the the placement of the arm it means this to me. The cup on the table means this. The magician means this or that. So there's certain, like, the
I
wording
feel
and
like
the
the
art's
easy
part
answer
of
to
it.
that question is just imagine trying to do it without on a blank card and then tell me how much you get. So I feel like that answers it right there is like, yeah, no, it's pretty important.
Absolutely. Even when I am using tarot decks that do not have um, imagery, such as the Rider Waite Smith deck, I will remember that, say, okay, so for example, if I'm using a deck that doesn't have that sort of imagery and it happens to be, say, the Two of Pentacles, I will remember in my brain space what the Two of Pentacles looks like in the Rider Waite Smith deck. And it will help me to call upon the symbolism and the imagery to carry it over into that reading and the deck and pair it together. So absolutely, I agree with you. That is a huge, I would say, the driving component of most intuitive tarot readers, um, beginner or otherwise. Absolutely. I had no idea the history of that. And now I will be more cognizant in calling it the Rider Waite Smith tarot deck to, acknowledge the all people who helped with that.
So that is tarot, or at least a brief history of it. Again, some people have it is a little bit murky, so sometimes there's some other, like, little stories or anecdotes that are kind of thrown in the history of tarot, but that's the general gist of it. Welcome to the intermission, folks. Thank you for joining us for part 2 on the long and rich history of divination. I have been seeing in my crystal ball how much you've been enjoying the show, and may I say you look extra fantastic today. Love what you did with your hair. We're so glad you're here to join us in the smoke circle, and I can also foresee in my crystal ball that you are liking and rating and reviewing the show and making sure that you are following us on whatever platform you are listening or watching on. And my crystal ball never shows me false visions. Also, please be sure to give us and Saundra a follow on social media. We're all on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and all of our social media accounts are listed and directly linked in the show notes. We also have the Best Buds Club. That's our Patreon. Over there, we have bonus episodes called Half-Baked Episodes. We have historical movie nights on the Big Brown Couch, historical cooking videos, and for all paid levels, you get access to episodes 2 days early before the public. So, how about that? In fact, as a special bonus for our best buds, Saundra spent some extra time with me giving a bonus collective tarot reading, as well as a channeled tarot reading from one of history's most famous names, Cleopatra. So that's some extra content that you can only get as a best bud. Members will also have access to bonus content that will be accompanying our upcoming special 100th episode, and you won't want to miss that. But I will give you a little hint, though. It rhymes with Mave Heart. That's patreon.com/High Tales of History. All right, your Palms podcast line. Yes, that's a real thing. Don't tell me otherwise. Is telling me that it's ready for some more divination history. So without further ado, let's pass it on to part 2. For the Victorians in the 19th century, tarot was a part of the spiritualism movement as a way to divine and speak to those beyond the veil. As I mentioned earlier, spiritualism will be discussed in more detail in a future episode, so you can get like the full effect of what was really going on here and what this whole movement looked like. Even if somebody wasn't really like into it, even if they weren't like, oh my gosh, this is my life, this is my passion, this is my whole personality, this is who I am now, I am spiritualism. Even if, okay, so there's
Divine
like that,
voting.
and there's person's like, that'd be kind of fun to like do a seance here and there. Isn't this fun? Isn't this exciting? And like might look at it as more of like a for funsy sort of thing. Regardless, even if someone wasn't really into it, they got some fun out of divination in parlor games, which was really popular. So you might be invited over to someone's house for a little soiree, and it's like a let's all retire to the parlor with the brandy sort of thing. And we might all go in there and have a little drink and a chit chat, or someone might play some music, or we might play some games together, like
Some
card
billions.
games or chess, maybe some
I've never
charades.
played pool. I would love to play
maybe
play
some
billiards
billiards. Yeah.
one day in my life.
Hmm. And even divination were things that were brought to the parlor. It's like more social forms of divination, quote unquote, social forms like palmistry. You can kind of like, oh, let's read palms, Oh, we'll talk about it. Or scrying. Crystal balls were real cool and popular in the 19th century. Fuck, they're still cool now. I want they just look so cool, right? Tarot, or there's some sort of cartomancy. Tea leaf reading called tasseography, in which one drinks a cup of tea or coffee, and then the sediment at the bottom is read to divine from. So you're looking for shapes or any sort of words or pictures, anything that can help you tell your fortune from the bottom of the cup. And then finally, Ouija boards and talking boards.
The Ouija?
The Ouija. I'm actually like holding my I'm holding my own hands just having to talk about this because they're interesting. So spirit boards and similar methods of divination have been around for centuries, millennia. I mean, Katie was talking about the sacred chickens in part one and how you could spirit board the ground based on where they were eating the grain. So you'd have to sit and
Ouija
spell out
chickens.
Ouija
Sacred
chickens.
Ouija chickens.
Yeah. The roots of spirit boards are a little bit murky, kind of like tarot. You're like, when was this exact moment that it happened? Because people were probably figuring out already how to put them together, fashioning some sort of crude uh, talking board or spirit board. But the commercialization of it, that's what we can track because capitalism, baby, we've got records of these things. And in the late 1800s, a group of men sought to find a way to make the methods of communication with spirits easier. Like I just mentioned, like some people might have just made one that had something that made sense to them that for messaging. Otherwise, a very typical way for receiving messages was by calling out the letters of the alphabet and waiting for some sort of like knock or sound to happen. So you'd be going A, B, C. Okay, C, write that down.
That's
A,
the most inefficient
B.
shit I've ever heard in my life.
Fucking snooze, dudettes. No way. So that would be boring as hell if you had to keep doing that. So these guys created the Kennard Novelty Company, and one of its investors, Elijah Bond, had a sister-in-law who was a medium, a quote, strong medium. So girl knew it was up. Her name was Helen Peters. She asked the board what it wanted to be called, and it spelled out Ouija. Yeah, that's right. We all spelled Ouija there. It's
Ouija?
Ouija. And no, it is not French for we and the German for ja. It's not yes, yes. No. That's a no. It's not. No,
Oh, no.
it is not at all.
So sad.
I know. Everyone's like, oh, French and German for yes. Nope. Sorry. The year is 1890. The Kennard Novelty Company introduced their, quote, wonderful talking board. And it was pretty straightforward. It pretty much looks the same as Ouija boards that we know today. It really hasn't changed over the years. Pretty straightforward. You've got some numbers, you've got all the letters of the alphabet, yes, no, and goodbye. So anyone participating, we'd ask a question. Everyone put a couple fingers on the planchette. But well, in this case, this was just like a little triangular pointer that would point. Today, it's like a little sort of diamond-y shape, and it's got a little clear plastic window for the letters. And then it would move on its own or appear to move on its own, depending on what you want to believe about that. And it would go around and it would spell out all the different letters for the message in response to the question. So a lot better than having to go through each letter. A, B. Could you imagine if you got to Y and then there's like a knock and you're like, oh God, now I got to start over again. You go through it and it's like U, Y, O, U. Okay, good. It was, because you could probably just get to a point where you're like, is the word you? One knock yes, two knocks no, something like that, and then you'd be like, oh, good, this is making this faster because
It would
God
take
help
a
me.
lot of the mysticism out of it. You'd just be sitting there like
So
a
bored.
scribe.
So
Like-
bored.
I am
Goodness.
telling you right now, the way that this is being described is I just am really getting some episodic memories of when I started to hone in on my gifts. And it really is that laborious. It was for me, and that meticulous, because I didn't want to miss anything. And
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm years down the road into it, it does go like this. But I am telling you, learning it feels just like that.
Oh,
Yes.
oh dear.
Yeah. Yes.
Mm, sounds fun.
There's so much second guessing. Did I? Did it? Wait. And it's
Hmm.
this huge lesson in discernment of, are you going to trust what your intuition is telling you with a yes, no, it is what you heard, or are you going to let your ego come in and say, absolutely, that wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? And it is,
Hmm.
whew, it is a mind
Yeah.
fuck, let me tell you.
Yeah. So the Ouija board does great. And by 1892, the Kenner Novelty Company expands to multiple offices, multiple cities. Business is booming. Internal conflict within the company led to some changeover, and William Fuld came in, took the sales and marketing even further. By the turn of the century, and with a mass production of them, spirit talking boards became a normalized place to seek answers to life and beyond, as well as just a form of entertainment for your sick party. Because at this time, death was very much a part of the culture, and it wasn't weird to talk about death. It wasn't weird to have death like literally in the room with you and have photos with your relatives as they are passed. It wasn't macabre and weird or whatever, because like death was, well, a prevalent part of society, but then also like death could happen at all times. Also, your lifespan wasn't as long, you could get sick and die really easily, so to have to be detached from it, that was the weird thing. And when you look at the times over the 19th and 20th century when Ouija boards were like flying off the shelf with sales, that makes a lot of sense. So in post Civil War America, they offered comfort or maybe even some answers for people during a time of uncertainty and loss and grief. They became popular again when spiritualism had a second wave in the 1920s, in the specifically in America, but during that time period. This is coming on the other side of World War One. I mean, holy shit, right? And
Mm.
then also the 1918 flu epidemic. So during the 20s, it was still a form of entertainment, but it was also like maybe I could speak to a loved one who has died in one of these events that's happened. So it was once again a way to help comfort in times of grief. But if you decided to have a fun little date night with it, that was also really popular throughout the 20s. So, like, couples would have a night in with the Ouija board and they would ask like flirty little questions. And so there's something very serious while also having something very lighthearted about it. But it was very normalized and people were all about talking boards. It's like, hey girl, you want to come over for some Ouija and chill, and we'll just like,
Yes, I do.
yeah, like, okay. Actually, do you guys want to know? I wrote this in here as like a side note. Do you want to know a sort of like spooky story regarding William Fuld, who was like the second guy that took over and like expanded the
I
Ouija?
mean, TMI stands for tell me immediately, so absolutely.
Okay. This is from one of my sources, the Guardian article by Baynard Woods. So I'm going to quote it directly here. He's referring to William is building this new factory. Okay, so that's kind of like where we're jumping in at here at this part. He continued to open new factories, building the largest, a 3-story building in Baltimore, after the Ouija board itself told him to, quote, prepare for big business. In early 1927, he went up to the roof of the building to supervise the replacement of a flagpole. According to the Baltimore Sun, quote, he was standing near the edge of the roof, grasping an iron support of the pole to steady himself, the workman said, when the support suddenly pulled away and he toppled over backwards. As in a movie, Fuld initially grabbed hold of the sill of an open window, which suddenly closed. So, like, he's holding onto the window ledge, the window closes down on him, sending him crashing down to the sidewalk below. He broke several ribs, but was expected to survive until a bump in, guys, oh my God, until a bump in the road on the way to the hospital sent one of the fractured bones through his heart, and that's when he died. His family continued to run the business until 1966 when they sold it to Parker Brothers, which was later bought by Hasbro, whose website warns, quote, handle the Ouija board with respect, and it won't disappoint you, end quote. So that's from the Guardian article. And I was like,
Wow.
so there's that.
Okay.
So there's that. That's William Fold.
Woof.
Other times that the board sold like mad was during World War II. In fact, during a 5-month period in 1944, just one New York department store alone sold 50,000 Ouija boards, which is a lot just for one store in 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
In 1967, this is the year after Parker Brothers buys the game, 2 million boards were sold that year, which outdid Monopoly. And this, 1967, being the same year where more American troops were dying in Vietnam. There's the Summer of Love, like the hippie movement coming out in California. And then there were also race riots all over the country. The Tate, in 1969, the Tate LaBianca murders by the Manson family, that happened towards, I think that was the summer of 1969, if I'm not mistaken. And that really freaked people out.
They really
Because,
had to ruin a good year, didn't they?
yeah.
Fuck
Mhm.
those people.
But the occult symbolism at those murder scenes, when people saw the pictures of it and heard what happened, that really freaked people out, and it made them start to be like, oh, like devil stuff's scary. Okay, so this is starting to happen here. But the Ouija board's still like, it's not like the Ouija boards were blamed for these murders. We're just talking about like this kind of change in perception around divination and any sort of like magical or supernatural practices.
Anything really occult, like symbolism or anything related to that, immediately got that negative, dark shroud of connotation on it.
And we're seeing this kind of evolve and change, particularly at the end of the 60s throughout the 70s and beyond, 70s and 80s for sure. But the Ouija board was still kind of thought of as like this fun little game, and people used them to either help solve crimes with the police or for fun or for creative inspiration, all these different things. But then 1973 comes. Do either of you know the horror movie that came out in 1973? It was a critical and financial success.
And there's only like one surviving version of the real one, too. I'm gonna guess, what is The Exorcist?
Ding, ding, ding. That's right. Yeah. The Exorcist
It's the
comes
most
out.
quoted movie in my house.
Interesting.
What a beautiful day for an exorcism, Father.
You haven't seen it all the way?
No,
Yeah.
I think I was like early teens when a group of us were like, we're gonna watch it, and then we turned it on. We're like, fuck this shit. Let's sleep. Oh wait,
Yeah.
now we can't.
Now we can't. We're
Yeah.
just
Well,
gonna
if you ever want to
all
complete that journey, let me know. It's one of my most favorite movies.
Yeah, damn.
It's always been known as like one of the scariest horror movies for sure. It won some Oscars that year at the Academy Awards. I mean, it is actually, it's an excellent movie, well made, but it
Good
is
movie.
scary as fuck.
Mhm.
In the movie, which is claims to be loosely based on a true story, it includes a brief scene of the main character as a child playing with a Ouija board by herself. And then she later becomes possessed and literal all hell breaks loose. And it was the first time that a Ouija board was seen in a movie having a consequence like that. And people started thinking, oh, can that happen? Can evil come through the board in that way? And then there's some other horror movies that that kind of echoed that sentiment. So almost overnight, people turned against it, and also against a lot of, again, like I said, like anything that was seen as supernatural or witchy or magic, divination in general, was all starting to get grouped together as evil or of the devil.
Taboo.
Especially
Mhm.
through the 70s and 80s, where we had the satanic panic in the United States, which I covered in episode 45. That one was really interesting. So if you'd like, whoa, what's going on there? Go episode 45. I'll link it in the show notes.
We have you covered.
We have got it covered. And then let's like King Kong versus Godzilla. Kaboosh, same thing. Boom. On
I
the other
just
side.
watched that yesterday. Holy shit. It's leaving Netflix soon. I had to see my big old nuclear dino.
There you go. At that same time, late 60s into the mid 70s, especially, is like where it starts. A different wave of spiritualism is hitting the scene. It's not the same sort of spiritualism as at the Victorians. This one's more of crystals, meditation, the idea of like spiritual waves from the earth, creating new eras, and people accepting certain levels of these energy cycles as they come around. So it's part of the New Age movement, and that takes place in the 70s, and then moves forward through, honestly, through today. And with it seems to be a kind of a combining of like East and West practices. There's a lot of like holistic health and holistic treatments that come about with this as well too. So a lot of these things all kind of fit together. It's the rise of like yoga and meditation and stuff through the 70s, and then today we have, I mean, gosh, we have so many divination practices, and also like with social media and with online platforms like, you know, YouTube and TikTok, that people from far away are still coming together in and creating groups within divination, you know, like, oh, hey, this is something I practice and I believe in, this sort of thing, or this is how, what sort of divination tools I use. And there's a coming together of people from all over the world and sharing their experiences and like how they're practicing. Like Saundra, you're on TikTok. You have a great community over there. You also are on Instagram too,
Mhm.
and you're doing readings for like group readings, which we're going to do a little
Mhm.
bit later tonight too, and sharing yourself with the world in that way and like connecting with people.
It's really great because we are living in a time where we have never had this kind of ability to connect so readily with people from all parts of the world and different cultures and different ways of thinking and mindsets. And so you have these groups of people who are kind of out loud looking at divination and people who are quietly looking at divination. People who are, you know, maybe still in pockets of like Christianity or some sort of faith or religion that don't um, tolerate certain divination or accept that. And so now with like social media and you know, like TikTok, there's so many tarot readers, and just you can go on YouTube and Instagram, whatever, to go find tarot readings and other divinations like dowsing rods and things like that. And people are quietly learning these things and out loud learning these things. So it is very vast what people are learning right now, and I think that is so cool, and I think that the communities forming are fun to watch, especially like people waking up being like, oh, oh, this is fun. Oh, I like this. And that's what's really nice too, is to watch people have fun with it and not just be so serious with it, and learning that it can be part of like a daily, their daily routine if they want. It doesn't have to be some out of reach concept, or I'm not good enough, or I can't touch that. That's not for me. I'm not good enough to do that. Like people are really starting to see it as more of a normalized situation instead of like, oh, only certain people can do it. Like
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, is it like, can anyone just learn how to do some of these methods, or do you have to have like a special gift or calling or some sort of sign that kind of lets you know this is for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am a firm believer that every person has the ability to tap into energy, and every person has the ability to receive energy and give energy. Now, how you receive it and what your body feels or what you sense is likely different from the next person. Whereas, like some people may have a strength in like um, I prefer tarot cards. Like that makes more sense to me. Other people are like, no, I love the dowsing rods. Or other people are like, no, I love casting runes. And other people are like, no, I love casting charms. Like it just, you can tap in. Anyone can tap into all the things. Um, it really is a matter of, do you want to? And what are your intentions with it? It is not as tricky as it may have been perceived or talked about in social circles. It's not as difficult to tap into today as maybe people have perceived it in the past. like what we're talking about with John Dee. Oh, he's all these things. He's an alchemist. He can do all the things. Of course he can tap in. Well, so can, Jane and Joe over here. They can do the same thing. So I will say this, there are closed practices where certain cultures or groups of people are it is accepted and widely known, or hopefully widely known, that they can tap into this practice. Things like Santeria with, indigenous people practice. Like, you have to really do your research, because we also want to honor and acknowledge what is and is not an open and closed practice. So yeah, but anyone can do it. Long story short, yes.
No, that's perfect. I really appreciate you putting that, making both of those points. And that was something actually I noticed in part one. It was edited out because it's kind of part of a conversation we were having outside of it. But Katie was talking about the sacred Indian tarot, and you were asking into it. But then at some point you mentioned, well, wait, is this a closed practice? And I noticed that you asked that, and I was like, that's really great, because sometimes people are going
That's why I left it in,
into it.
because it was in some of the sources, and
Yeah.
I was like, that seems important. I'm going to make sure that I mention that, because it said that it was only within the scope of, like, that specifical, what the fuck,
I
Katie?
like that, though.
What
Actually,
do you
that's a
think
much
you
cooler
are?
word.
It ain't in no specifical manner of being within that culture and religion. Jiminy Christmas. I'm muting myself again.
But no, but it is definitely worth noting, because sometimes there are a lot of stories, especially within this new age spiritual practice, that people are really appropriating cultures that
Yes, be
they
careful. You're not
shouldn't.
stealing ideas. It
Right.
ain't cool, man.
Exactly. So it's
Do your research
so
before you buy
awesome.
a pet or before you get involved in spiritual matters. Do your
Mhm.
research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself, as Ice Cube would say. I really appreciate you mentioning that. And also I feel like in the first half of your answer there, that everyone can do that.
Mhm.
I think that's also worth noting too. And also, like, what you feel resonates for you. And
The
um
best I ever received about divination: if it feels fun, try it out. If it no longer feels fun, take a break. It has been the best way for me to navigate what fits with me personally. There's no obligation to stay with one thing if it no longer feels fun. Have fun with it.
how many forms of divination do you practice, or at least do you have some sort of, well, that you either
Lot.
do well or okay, yeah. What are some of your favorites that you like?
Well, tarot cards are absolutely my favorite. I have some dowsing rods. I have pendulums. I have what looks like a talking board, or what we were talking about is like an Ouija board. Um, I do muscle testing. Do you know what muscle testing is?
I only think I've seen it once, maybe
Okay.
twice. So yeah,
So
please
muscle
tell me.
testing, from what I have done, is I will stand up on, just standing, and it's a yes, no question, right? So you are going to, um, basically, to start out, you're going to ask your body, show me what yes will mean. And basically, are you going to fall forward, or are you going to fall backward? So now, oh, okay, what is yes? Forward is yes for me. Okay, great. Now I know that if I fall backwards, it's a no answer. And so basically, you're going to stand there, ask a yes, no question, and you are going to allow your body to fall in whichever way it may. Okay. And that will is determined to be the answer. And you don't have to take that first answer as total, going in blind. You can ask, okay, confirm it, show me again, is this a yes or no? You can do that. And I in fact encourage people to get confirmations, to just kind of solidify whatever they're looking to do, because you don't ever have to trust anything that comes out the first time. You really don't. Trust your gut. If you feel it, you feel it, but you're allowed to ask for more confirmations. Also, can I throw this out there? Magic 8 ball. Tell me a family of kids in the 90s who didn't have a magic 8 ball. Shake that shit up.
Oh, I wanted one so bad, and I was never allowed to have one because,
What?
as you'll
I
find
thought
out
you
in
had one on
episode
your desk.
45. What's that?
I thought you had one on your desk. I thought, because I didn't get one, I thought I had to sneak in and use it with you.
No,
Where
I've
did
never
the
had
8 ball
one.
come
Wanted one real bad. But as if you listen to episode 45, you'll realize why Laurel wasn't able to have a magic 8 ball or anything that was like wizardy or
Mhm.
fantasy or, yep.
Yeah.
until the spawn of Satan came along.
And then Katie came along and things changed.
A lot changed.
Things changed.
The world changed.
That's amazing.
The world was not ready for her,
Yeah.
and neither were our parents.
I'm still
Actually,
not ready for me.
yeah. And we love her for it. I sure do. Loosen things up a little bit. But you're right. I wanted a magic 8 ball so bad, and every time I saw one, I was like, it's like, like looking at it. And something that you were talking about is like the gut intuition and just like the knowing and like learning to trust that, going through that process. So what? How does one know? How will I know? In the words of Whitney Houston, if he really loves me, how will I know? Am I?
God,
Is it? Am I going to see it? Am I going to feel it? Am I hear it? Katie's. I heard it. That was what I got right there.
God, I need to go dance with somebody. Okay, so the way that you can, so basically the clairs, if you've heard of the clairs, there's 8 of them, I believe 8. But basically this is the way that you perceive energetic information. Okay, so in your body, what pops into your head first? What are you feeling in your body? Where are you feeling it in your body? So there's clairvoyance. That's like the big one that most people know. And that's like clear seeing. So you've heard of a third eye. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, of your chakras and energy spaces, but centers, excuse me. So it's like, when you are sitting there reading a book, are you imagining what you're reading as a movie while you're reading this book? That is your imagination, but it is absolutely tied into your third eye and what you can quote unquote see. So that's that clairvoyance is, what are you seeing in your mind's eye? And then a big one for me is also, so let me back up. Clairvoyance is one of my strongest clairs that I tap into, the way that I perceive energy. I see things very often. Then I would say my second is clairaudience. That means I hear things. And it's not just I hear things like we are talking. Yes, that happens. But I hear things in my head as if you're having a conversation playback with someone in your head. You know what your voice is, you know what not your voice is, or your voice is not. That's basically the clairaudience. But you can also gain messages with clairaudience through music or things like that. My next one is like this like clear knowing. It's like I can walk into a room and just know something is off with people or something is on with people, or even if no people are in there, I can know what's going on in the energetic space of the room. Or even if like you're walking on a trail and you feel like someone's looking at you, that clear knowing, I'm not alone right here, something is
Yeah.
watching me. um then my next one that is pretty strong is clear aliens. So like clear smelling. I smell things all the time. If you've ever just been around in like a space that's clean and all of a sudden you smell cigarette smoke and there's not a smoker anywhere nearby, things like that. I can smell metals. I can smell perfumes. I can smell whatever it is, foods. Some of the other ones are a little less strong for me, but the other ones are like, clear. Oh, clear cognizance, I would say, is probably another one. So clear feeling, clear knowing. But some of the other less strong ones for me are like clear touch. So if I touch something, I don't really get a good handle, pun intended, um, on like the energy with it. Some people can touch an item and know, oh, it was made by this person and at this place, and they can just gain the energy. That's not really my jam. And then the other one is like you can taste things in your mouth. That will happen sometimes for me. but not nearly as much as the other ones. And then the other one is clear empathy. And this is different from like feeling someone's sad. It's like you're knowing exactly the depth of their sadness. You can feel the depth of their excitement. You can feel the depth of their joy, things like that. Yeah. So my clairs are how I perceive information more readily. And then I tie it into when I'm doing tarot or some other use of a divination tool that really helps me gain messages and gain confirmations and messages.
That's fascinating. I knew of a few of those clairs, but then when you described the rest of them, I was like, oh, yeah, I suppose there are so many other senses, like, the physical
Mhm.
senses that we're aware of that like do the same thing,
Yeah.
like beyond,
Yeah.
beyond the physical necessarily. So
Your whole body is a divination tool, believe it or not. And that is why I am such a firm believer in we all are able to tap into this.
well, thank you for sharing your experience with us, because it's really interesting to actually hear from somebody who is doing the things that we've been talking about and have been a part of humanity and history, all the peoples around the world for millennia. And it's really cool to see, well, to hear your experience, but then also to see it in action, which is great. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. So Saundra has been kind to say, like, we'll do a group reading here and see what the cards say, basically. So Saundra, do you want to tell us about what you want to do tonight?
Yes. So I can I'm going to do a collective reading for basically you both are part of the collective here, but also anyone listening or watching is part of the collective. So when you have anyone using some sort of divination tool and you're not the one doing it, use discernment always. And what does that mean? It means if it makes sense to you and fits with you, let it in. If it doesn't, don't try to make it fit because maybe the message isn't for you, but maybe you're just meant to be there and experience it. So that is a huge lesson for everyone. Not every love reading is for you, not every collective reading is for you. It's okay to say that it's not for you, basically. It's also okay to say that it is for you. Now, for tarot cards, I cleanse my decks anytime I do a reading that is new for any person or even myself, because the theory is, but basically the energy from the previous reading is not the energy you want on your reading, right? So any person who's doing tarot or something like that will cleanse their deck, and it's really their own routine. It really fits with whatever they have decided is like their jam, their relationship with the cards, because every tarot deck has its own personality, believe it or not. So I'm going in with my Celtic deck. Actually, we're going to do some honoring of some Celtic women for Women's History Month. Yes,
I'm
shout
excited.
out to the Witches of Scotland
Mhm.
who've commissioned that amazing tart, and I can't wait
Love it.
to see that. Anyway, okay, so collective reading. I'm just going to go in with what is the immediate message for the collective watching or listening. And I'm only going to take the cards if they pop out. Other ways that people can do a tarot reading is by a specific thread. Nope, by a specific spread. Okay, so the Ten of Pentacles reversed. The Ten of Pentacles speaks to a closing of a cycle, especially in your physical reality, but it's reversed, so it's not quite finished yet. The Devil reversed. While this cycle is completing, remaining in a healthy mindset is very important. So this is what I'm really picking up on is it's indicative of old patterns, old ways of thinking, old ways of, I'm hearing routining, that weren't necessarily aligned. And it feels like more of a complacent energy and not one that you want to bring into the long term of your energy space. And it's something that you've grown out of. So just being mindful of while this cycle is closing, whatever it is that you're in your physical reality, to be mindful that we're not going back to the patterns that maybe weren't so aligned. Tell me more, please. Okay. So there's just this, while you're moving forward, remembering how you are capable of filling your own cup, but not just filling your own cup, but acknowledging that other people, places, and things can help you to feel and receive emotional fulfillment. It almost feels like you don't have to do it alone. So while cycles are closing, it's not a codependency, because that feels like a thing of the past, a past version. It's like you're allowed to ask for help, and it's okay to acknowledge that asking for help is not codependent. And so while you're moving forward in this action plan, while the cycle is closing out, oh, it's also learning to love yourself. Interesting. Okay. I'm really getting a lot of overthinking. I don't know if this collective has a lot of like stress around decision making, but it feels very stressful, and maybe something that is like this hamster wheel of just like thoughts, the ladder of thoughts. Every time you have dealt with one thought, the next one comes down as if like the rungs of a ladder. You know, right when we're about to close out a cycle, it feels the heaviest. And that is sometimes how we know we are right there. And it's like that last like push through. I'm really getting this image of of a woman birthing a child, and it's like just one more push hard, go. Like that's really what I'm seeing right now. Okay. So what is the last? They're saying two more cards. Last little bit. 1, 2. All right. Yeah, justice and the 8 of Pentacles. So basically, things are balancing out. Don't forget how hard you worked to get to this point. You worked so hard to overcome these obstacles and to earn and receive this justice that you deserve. This is a milestone in the life events. And it's really important to acknowledge the work that you have put in, the work you continue to put in, and how important it is for you to receive exactly what it is that you deserve emotionally. And it is okay to ask for help. Asking for help is not codependent. You are not the past version of yourself. However, all versions of yourself deserve love. And they deserve to be acknowledged and honored. And that's okay. It's also okay to be completely whole in this new version of yourself while the cycle is closing. There you go. That's making me emotional.
I was sitting there going, well, I'm going to go cry on my pillow later.
I feel really happy emotion right now. I really do.
I was having a lot of thoughts, and I was like, I'm just going to sit this one out.
Holy
the
shit.
bottom of the deck is the Ace of Wands, which is all about brand new beginnings, create a fire lit under your ass, and really passionate feelings. So there you go.
Ooh, Saundra. Thank
Damn,
you.
girl.
Thank you. I hope that was God, that was a really cool experience for me and very enlightening. And I hope you at home as you're listening, like whenever it is that you're listening and hearing that, or maybe even if you come back to this later, like when you need it, that kind of feels. I mean, this is at the very end of the episode. It's okay. You can fast forward through me talking for however long this episode ends up being. Just fast forward right to the end, find Saundra again. But if you want to find Saundra at all times, I did not mean to segue that like a dickhead, but I'm going to take it and run with it.
Do it. That was a great segue. Don't say you segue like a dickhead. That was fabulous.
If you're like, I need more of this all the time, where is Saundra? Where can I find her? Where would that be?
Well, you can find me on my website. It's where you can book a reading with me, saundrainsagittarius.com. You can find me on TikTok at Saundra in Sagittarius. That's my handle. And then my handle for Instagram is at Saundra in Sag. I'm also on Blue Sky and YouTube, but I'm not readily using those as much now that TikTok is back online. But should TikTok ever go away, that's another location you can find me. Yeah.
That's where we find you. Excellent. Well, I'll make sure I have those all written on the screen, probably at the bottom, so that way you can visually see them. And then I will also have direct links to them in the show notes. Well, under a section about our guests, so places that they can find you, which is right along with our social media as well too. So give us a follow if you want, folks. We would love that, of course. It's been one hell of a ride with you ladies. Thank you so much for joining me for 2 parts, and Saundra for all the knowledge that you've shared with us over these past couple of these evenings where we've been recording in chunks and parts. So thank you so much.
This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, we have too. And you know what? Should you feel so inclined, again, Victorian spiritualism, well, the spiritualism movement, they were all about their mediums and the divination and their seances and all kinds of stuff. So I think that you'd be a perfect person to come back and chat about those things. Should you choose? If you'd like this, if you're like, you know
the
what,
mood shall strike.
I need more chaos in my life and need to go on that show with Katie and Laurel and just fill my boots with chaos.
Yes, immediately. That sounds amazing. I would totally be there. You let me know.
That would be our pleasure. That would be so much fun. So folks, check out Saundra on her different social media platforms and her website and see more of what she's doing, because you got talent, kid. That was really good. It was really fun. And yeah, gosh, we're gonna go. This is such a great season 5, as I'm calling it, season 5. We have episode 100 coming up soon.
Oh,
like I realized tonight,
it looms on the horizon.
Yes, I had 97. I was saying 98. Oh my goodness, we got 99 and 100. So we have a big, spectacular extravaganza. I don't know. I've got to think of a name. My mouth wanted to say spectacular, and I was like, that's ripping off Moulin Rouge. And I did not mean to do that. I was like, I think of something different here, Laurel. But yeah, we get to do it all again in a couple of weeks for episode 99. In the meantime, folks, get money, get high, give love, and
listen, people. It's going to sound stupid, but kindness makes the world go round. A small act of kindness sometimes is a big deal to other people. So be kind to people and do it selflessly and not at want of return for yourself, just for the world around you to just be a better place. So, yeah, I'll leave you with that.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.